Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 37 of the Natural Female Muscle podcast. I hope that you are having a wonderful day so far when you get around to watching this week's episode, as always. As on this week's episode, we are going to run through show day tips and advice. This leads on quite nicely from the past couple of episodes where we've actually talked through the prep itself, and particularly a lot of information that will be helpful for first timers. But one of the main things that so many first timers do, I suppose, like worry about or, think about a lot, leading into the prep is the actual show day, planning everything for the show day, making sure that everything's organized, knowing what to expect, because that is the biggest unknown as such. One thing that I do always recommend if you are somebody who is thinking of competing or is competing like this year, next year, whatever it may be, actually going to a show before you compete is really important. One, so that you can actually see the shows, make sure that that's something that you want to do. And also just to get a really good idea of like what that day looks like. Like you'll see other athletes on the day and, see them around the venue and then also see them on stage and see what kind of goes into that final look, which is important because it builds your expectations so that when you're going in, it's not all completely new. The best thing really is definitely going to the show that you're thinking of doing, because that's even better so that you've already been there as a spectator and then you're now just going as a competitor, and that definitely does help you. So you already kind of know your whereabouts, what the venue looks like, how the show is ran, you kind of know a little bit more to expect. So that's probably the best advice I can give before I go into anything else is, already kind of create your bearings through that. I think that can be extremely helpful. But when we're actually looking at the things that you need to plan when it comes to your own show day, what we want to do is we want to make sure that, everything is planned out in advance as best as possible to save any last minute stress. Because at the end of the day, like with your prep, you want to really just focus on the prep itself. You want to focus on getting the job done, enjoying it, focusing on the things you need to do on the day to day. You definitely don't want to be in that position where you're a few weeks out and you've still not booked accommodation. You're actually trying to book for your shows last minute, all of these things. And I've seen it before where people have actually left it too late to even book shows and not realized, and then they've missed the cutoff point. So you definitely don't want to be in that position. So I know it's kind of a bit of an obvious one to say, but when you can lock your shows in and you can register for those shows, get that sorted as soon as possible when you definitely know what shows you're going to do. If you're not sure, like you can always leave it until a little bit later and you can join shows later on. Usually it's like 3-4 weeks as a cutoff point, depends on the federation. But if you know what you're doing, book it in, get yourself registered, get it sorted, because that's just one thing you don't have to worry about. You don't need to worry about the show reaching like any capacity, because sometimes that does happen. And it's quite nice because it makes it kind of real in a sense. You're not still thinking like, oh, I'm doing a show here, but it's not set. Whereas if you get everything booked, everything sorted, it's like, okay, like I'm actually doing this. I'm getting everything sorted now, and that's exciting. That's good fun. So I would get that sorted first and foremost ahead of time. Then you don't need to worry about that. Then there's obviously everything else that goes into the show day, what you need on the show day, what you need around the show day weekend that you want to get booked, you want to get sorted in advance. And again, the kind of emphasis there is get it sorted in advance. Please, please, please do. The sooner you do these things, often the better. So usually the first thing that most competitors are going to be thinking about, females particularly, because this is really important for us, is your suit or your bikini, getting this sorted. Because you're probably really excited for this, and that's a good thing. And you do want to make sure that this is something that you've thought about, you've got ready, you feel confident, you feel happy with your suit or your bikini. And it's not something that you're kind of leaving to the last minute, because that again is just another stress. Is it going to be ready on time? Am I going to like it? Did it need adjustments and I didn't, get it sorted well in advance? So you want to have your suit, your bikini. If you're wearing jewelry, you don't necessarily need jewelry, but you've got that sorted. Get that planned kind of in advance. Get a bit of a vision board going if you need to, but make sure that you're sorting this ahead of time. Now, when it does come to your heels and your suit, I do want to preface by saying it doesn't need to be anything absolutely extraordinary. And this is something that I kind of wish I knew a little bit more beforehand. Is, you think you need to have this absolutely incredible suit and these heels that have got all like the crystals or the diamantes on them or whatever it may be. And it doesn't actually make a difference. Like on stage, especially heels, the judges don't care if you've got clear heels, crystal heels, whatever. Get whatever heels work best for you. That's totally cool. And even with the suit, like, it doesn't need to be spectacular. At the end of the day, if you've got a winning physique or you've got a physique that is competitive, you've got a competitive physique. But you do definitely need to have a suit that is cut well. Like, you do see sometimes when people get on stage and their suits, their bikinis, like, actually don't fit, or they don't look right, or they're actually the wrong shape or whatever it may be for the division. So making sure that you've actually researched in advance what you need for your division. Obviously, bikini, you need a two-piece, figure, you need a suit. Different federations also will require a different style. So, like, for example, in like two bros, generally they wear like triangle bikinis, whereas in PCA you can wear more of the cup style if you want to. There's different styles that you can go for, and just kind of knowing what suits your federation or what suits your class is definitely important. And also kind of knowing what colours will actually suit you and your skin tone does make a difference as well. And this is where reaching out to somebody who designs suits or somebody who designs bikinis and actually talking to them and asking them their opinions as well is important. Because you might go in and say like, oh, I want, a pink suit. And to be fair, if you want a pink suit, you get a pink suit. But if they say, you know what, like your skin tone and because of your hair color and your eye color, you'd actually really suit like blue, or you'd suit green, or whatever it may be, it might be worth taking that advice on board, because you do actually see a difference in that sometimes with competitors on stage, particularly in the divisions like bikini and figure, where the overall look is a little bit more important. If you have a suit that suits you better, you will kind of stand out a little bit more for your overall look. As I said, if the physique's good, the physique is good, but having those things that also give you a lot more confidence on stage is definitely important. So kind of having a slight awareness of those things can add those very fine details. One thing I will actually say here that is a huge common mistake I see with like figure suits, but bikini as well, is when you are getting your bikini fitted or your suit fitted, make sure that the bottoms, whether that just be your bikini bottoms or the bottom part of your suit, it actually sits well above your like hip bones. Because what that actually does is it creates a much greater taper to your look. When you sometimes see where people have the suit and it sits all the way down on their hips, like all the way down, it massively like limits the amount of shape they've got and makes them look quite blocky actually. So making sure that you have a suit that fits well is important. The timing of like organizing these things with getting your suit sorted and the fittings and everything like that, it does depend on the person making your suit. So have a look, have a chat with that person. It's always better to reach out too soon rather than too late, and them to say, oh, you don't need to get in touch with me until XYZ. Some people you can see in person, some people you do everything online, but usually you'll send across your final measurements a little bit closer to the date. Often it's a few weeks out that you'll send across your final measurements, because of course you will be getting leaner throughout that process. But just making sure that you kind of feel confident with the person that you're working with, whether that's seeing them in person or whether it's online, and that you can communicate exactly what you want, exactly the size, the style, everything. And if you have any issues, you feel like you can go to them with it, because it's really important. And ultimately you're paying and kind of investing in something that is a lot of money, and you want to display all of your work extremely well. So making sure that you actually put the effort into getting that sorted is super important. But on that note of something that costs a lot of money, suits and bikinis are very expensive. Now, you don't need to get one that is the top level that costs an absurd amount of money. I've seen some extremely expensive stage suits. Now, if you want to do that, and that's a nice investment for you, it means a lot to you, you want to keep it, maybe you use it in future seasons, or you just want it as like a souvenir kind of thing, like that's actually fine. But if you are on the side of things where you do need to be more financially careful with where you spend your money, because let's be honest, like competing is expensive, especially as a female with everything you've got to pay for. You can, not necessarily cut corners, but you can make it more cost effective. Like you can rent a suit. You can rent a suit, you can buy one secondhand, and it will still do the job and it will still look amazing. Rather than doing what I did, which is like I spent maybe £400 on my bikini, and I wore it once. I wore it for 30 minutes and I've never worn it again. And I will never wear it again because I'm not competing in bikini anymore either. I should probably sell it, to be honest. So if anyone wants it, please let me know. But just you don't have to invest a load of money into it, and there are ways that you can save money as such, and definitely don't like splurge on a bikini or a suit if that then actually affects you in other ways financially, like spending loads of money on a suit but then not being able to book accommodation or book transport or book your tan, like all these things, or pay for your registration, like those are the things that are actually way more important. So make sure that you've kind of got your priorities straight when it comes to that, because ultimately, as long as you get on stage in something that you feel confident in, you can be compared in, you can see your physique in, that's all that matters. It doesn't need to be anything absolutely spectacular. So that's everything with the suit and like the look on that front. There's obviously other aspects that you have to plan when it comes to the show day, getting you ready for the show day, and you want to plan these things in advance. Accommodation, first and foremost, is something that you will definitely need to book for a show, unless you are obviously living relatively local to that show, which really I'm going to say a couple of hours at most, because any more than that, you do potentially run into issues of not being able to get there on time, and there being traffic and there being stress, etc. But I'll come on to the pros and cons of that in a moment. But if you are going to book accommodation for somewhere, do it sooner rather than later, because if you, again, when you're competing, the date, the closer you get to that show, you can guarantee if there's a couple hundred other competitors in that show, a lot of the good accommodation is probably going to get booked, and you don't want to be staying somewhere that is not very nice. Because one piece of advice that I can give is, it kind of falls in line with that suit. It's like, if you're going to spend a lot of money on something, I would actually recommend having somewhere like relatively nice to stay before a show, because often like a big issue that I see is when competitors will stay somewhere like really, really awful before a show because they like booked it last minute, couldn't find anywhere, and then they have a really awful night's sleep. They have a really horrible experience. Like, to me, I almost like to think that, like, if I'm going to go somewhere for a show, or if I'm going to compete, like, I will definitely do this. I will almost view it as like, this is like my little holiday, because it's probably the only trip that I'll get. And it's like, if you're going to go somewhere and this means a lot to you, like, make it nice. Don't, add more stress onto it by kind of, just leaving it too late and not getting anything sorted. So get that sorted in advance, because it will be more cost effective, and you'll be able to actually stay somewhere nicer. So I would absolutely get that sorted sooner if you can do. So obviously within that, you need to decide if you're actually going to stay or if you're going to stay at home. So there's definitely pros and cons of doing this, and often it's kind of related to your tanning plans as well. So the pros of staying close to the venue are that, one, you're just quite simply close to the venue. So it's very, very easy for like going to tanning appointments, which often you will have a tanning appointment for like your base coat the night before the show or the day before the show. So being there the day before really does help for that, so that you can just so easily be to the venue. On the day itself, you can very quickly be to the venue. Any other appointments like registration, makeup, hair, you can book it all in the same place. And you don't have to worry about, really being anywhere for a given time, or not making it somewhere, or there being traffic or other issues in order to get there, because that is not something that you realistically want to deal with. So that's the pro, is that you're already there, already sorted, don't need to worry about being late, don't need to worry about the timings for things, because that can be really stressful if you're trying to organise your time for your tan, you're not sure what time you're going to get there and what time the registration is, and it's a lot to think about, and where you're going to park and like all of that. So if you can get that sorted in advance, that really helps, and then you don't need to worry about that around the weekend. The cons though of staying near the venue are that obviously you are in a different environment, and this is something that is either like good or bad for different people. For some people, it's really nice to actually get out of a different environment. Like I just touched on, if you're actually staying somewhere quite nice, it's nice to be in a different environment. But if you are feeling like you're really pulled out of your routine and then like actually being in a different environment, packing up all of your stuff, having to stay somewhere that like maybe the area that you're competing in isn't very nice and there's not a lot of great options for accommodation. Usually there is, but sometimes there isn't. Maybe it's best for you to stay at home, stay in your usual environment, sleep in your bed, get a good night's sleep, be able to make all of your own meals in your kitchen, not have to worry about the stress of that. But of course, you then would probably have to travel for your base coat of tan the night before, or you'd have to get somebody else to do it. So usually when people choose this option, they either have to find somebody else who can do a base coat for them, like a spray at their location, or you do it yourself. You do your own base coat and then you just go and get a top coat on the day. That's generally what you'd have to do. So in my opinion, I do tend to think that if it's a good bit away from home, like you're not super close to the venue and you can't just, commute in, because sometimes you'll probably compete somewhere that's only like half an hour away from home, and that's great, but it's rare that that's the case. So if it is longer than that, I do generally suggest staying in the location, getting it sorted in advance, and that will really, really help. If you do choose to go and stay away, or if you are staying away from home, I really recommend that you try to replicate your normal check-in spot at home at your new accommodation. So this is why generally at home, finding a check-in spot that's basically like a black backdrop and like a ring light or a Lumi light or something like that is perfect, because then when you go somewhere else, you can just take that with you. You take it with you, you can put it in any location and it will look pretty much the exact same. And that's really, really, really helpful, because the last thing that you want is to like get to a new location and then you're trying to find somewhere to take your check-in shots to send to your coach. There's nowhere to take them. You take them somewhere different and the lighting looks awful, and then you're just stressed. Like, you do not want that. So if you do need to go somewhere and you do need to take shots for your coach, then I would definitely try to replicate that background as best as you possibly can do, because it will really, really, really help. So the tan then itself, when it comes to organising the tan, again, this is another one of the things that if you can book this in as soon as possible, get it booked in, get it paid for, don't have to worry about it. But I would always recommend going for the tanning company that is at the show or that is affiliated with the show. Reason being for this is that, one, it's going to be the easiest thing to do, is like it'll probably be near the venue, it'll be organised with the show, so it'll be super easy to book, and you'll also be the same as everyone else on stage, because most people will be having that tan on. And the one thing that you don't want is to get on stage and to be completely lighter, completely darker, or completely different shade to everybody else on stage. You want to be as comparable as possible, and you don't want to stick out for the wrong reasons. So I would definitely always recommend getting the same stage and show day tan as everybody else, plus you don't have to worry about doing it yourself. However, there's one kind of caveat to this. One, if you know that another tan works a bit better to your skin tone, you can definitely do that yourself. Like, some people know that like Pro Tan always works better than them, or they have somebody that always does their tan that looks a little bit better for them. That's not a problem. And one example of this is, like, for example, with the BNBF. They don't obviously have a tanning crew. Anyone that's competed with them will know this. They use their own dark as tan, and some people love this, some people hate this. So I think that if you know something like that doesn't look great on you, maybe get it in advance and you can even try it. Pro Tan here is usually a slightly better option, and you can just do that yourself instead, because you've got to do your tan on your own anyway. And if you know that one tan is going to look best for you, then do that. The only thing you need to make sure that you do, if it's your first time competing and you are tanning yourself, just make sure you're dark enough, because the last thing you want is to not be dark enough. So always make sure that you're kind of a bit darker than you probably think, because you'll be so dark that off the stage you'll look silly, but when you are under the stage lights, you will look normal. It's not like doing your usual fake tan or going for your usual spray tan. It's so much darker than that, and you have to make sure that that's there. So that's booking, accommodation, tan, suit. Hair and makeup is kind of like the final thing to touch upon this. In my opinion, doing this yourself is actually the best thing that you can do. Or like having somebody that you know who can do it for you, like a friend or something, because it will make the day a lot easier, so that one, you don't have to pay for anything, which is obviously, again, helpful financially, but you also don't need to stress about appointments, which can be quite difficult on show day if you've got registration, tan, hair, makeup, and then you've also got the time that you've got to be on stage, and then you've also got to eat your meals. You've also got to make sure that you're everywhere that you need to be on time. You need to make sure that you're not walking everywhere and getting super fatigued. If you can do it yourself, it does really, really help. So if you like doing your own makeup, or if you want to get better at doing it, you can honestly find so many tutorials and like practice this in advance. And it does honestly just save so much time and make things a lot easier. But that's not to say you have to do it, because it's sometimes nice to get your makeup done and you might just prefer for somebody else to do it so you don't have to stress about it. But make sure that you book well in advance to get an appointment, because these things do book up close to the show. And if you're trying to book it in like 3 weeks out, you're probably going to find it really difficult. And you want to make sure that it's with somebody that like you trust to do it well, because the last thing you want is to pay for somebody to do your show day makeup and you not like it. And that's another reason why kind of doing it yourself maybe helps if you have a preference with how your makeup looks, because otherwise somebody could do your show day makeup and you might really dislike the way that you look, and that's not what you want. And realistically, all you need with your show day makeup is to make sure that your face matches your body, and you need to make sure that you feel confident in how you look. It doesn't need to be anything extravagant. It's really just whatever makes you feel confident. So that's my my recommendations on that front. So I'm just going to take a quick drink break. Okay, and then we will go on to the show day then itself. So, show day. Show day is now the day for you to enjoy all of the work that you've put in. And this is, as I've said so many times, this is like the beauty of bodybuilding, where by this point, you literally have done everything. You've done everything. Even posing, you've done all the practice, you know what you need to do. All you've got to do is go on stage and present it. Like, you have done everything. There's not really a huge like performance element now to getting on stage. You know, you have to get on, you have to hit your shots, but like your posing routine's not judged. Nothing else is judged. They're looking at your physique. And that's why you can just go in and just be proud of everything you've done and actually really enjoy the day. So with this, it's making sure that you actually keep yourself in a really, really calm and confident headspace going into the day and throughout the day. Going on stage, before you get on stage, that's what's most important. So there's a few kind of tips surrounding this that I'm going to go through that will hopefully help you to stay in that spot across the day. So first and foremost, when it comes to the night before the show, try to keep your sleep routine as normal as possible. I think it's sometimes very easy when, say, if you're like especially traveling to stay somewhere else, or you know, you're thinking about the show, you've got friends and family there, you kind of get excited, you want to do different things, you're up chatting or you're going to appointments. Try and keep it as similar as you possibly can do. Like, you'll probably be in a routine where you're kind of just having your normal meal, you're switching off, you're going to bed. Keep it as similar to that as you possibly can do. So that would be the number one tip, is like really have some downtime the night before, really try and switch off, make sure you have that usual time pre-bed. You'll probably have some interrupted sleep. That's normal because you'll be excited, but make sure that you are giving yourself the best opportunity to just have that downtime, like probably be taking like your usual supplements, usual things that you've already got in place to improve your sleep across prep. Make sure you keep that in place the night before. And then when it comes to the actual morning as well, like also keep the routine exactly the same. Aside from if you've obviously making any direct changes when it comes to probably like not having cardio in or not having a given meal at a specific time, because you'll be working around show days, but keep your usual like wake up, like maybe it'll be like have a coffee, hydrate, like these things will probably be very, very similar. And the whole thing, like in my opinion anyway, with peaks is like the more similar that you kind of keep things, the lower stress that it is, and also the more predictable that the look is. So the more that you can keep your stress low by keeping these things very similar, very calm, the better. So that's also kind of why when it comes to appointments, if you can avoid having like appointments super, super early, it does help, because otherwise it will affect your sleep, it will affect your look. So try to kind of arrange these things so that they don't interfere with ultimately just keeping your stress low and ensuring that you can enjoy the day as best as possible, because that is very, very, very important. When it comes to then the look and your check-ins and things like that around the show as well, definitely don't analyze your look too much. I've already talked about, taking a consistent kind of check-in lighting and things like that, which can be helpful. The best thing you can really have is, having your coach with you on your show day, so that they can see you, so you don't have to take shots yourself. Because the worst thing you could do is take a show day tan, take pictures in your show day tan, and be like, I look awful. Because when you get your show day tan on, you usually don't look very good. Most competitors really don't. Honestly, nobody looks good in their show tan off stage. The only time your tan actually looks good is when you're on stage under the lights. Outside of that, it will often make you look quite like washed, and it's really, really hard to judge the look after the tan has gone on. And that's why, actually, again, like having a very predictable like peak is actually really important. So this is a method that I am a huge fan of personally, but making sure that, with your peak, and you'll have something with your coach, whatever it may be, where you're confident in what the outcome is going to be, because maybe you've also trialed it before, or whatever it may be, but knowing roughly what you're going to look like on that show day based on the plan and the protocol that you've put in place. And usually from coaching side of things, it's knowing what different body weights looks like, being able to understand based on the client's feedback, but having something that is going to be predictable, and you already have a plan of what to do. Because it's very hard, like I say, to actually see what's going on with the look when the show day tan is like already on. So definitely don't analyze the look at that point. The plan will probably already be in place. If your coach asks for shots, take the shots, send them over to them. But they're probably not going to be using those as a massive means of analysis anyway. And it will more so just be confirmation at that stage to just make sure that you're happy with the plan and the process that you guys have got in place from there. So definitely don't overanalyze from that point. Again, like I said, like the work is kind of done. You're just doing the final stages to probably just cruise you into the show. Update your coach as needed, but really focus on enjoying the day that you've got ahead of you. In the morning then, when you actually get to that venue, it's likely you'll be there in the morning. Try not to get overexcited. It can be really, really easy on show day, especially your first one, to be quite like overstimulated. You want to see everyone, talk to everyone, run around the show day venue, see this person, see that person. If you've got family members there, that you probably want to, see them, say hello, and do all this stuff. And I'm not saying you can't do that, but the last thing you want to do is run around like a headless chicken. It's not really what you want on show day, because really what you want to do when you get to the venue and on the day is, it's likely that your coach just wants you to kind of chill and rest. You might have a little bit of activity in place just to kind of keep moving, but it's more so likely that the plan will be for you to rest. So either chilling in the crowd or going backstage is really, really going to be super helpful. Maybe even get a nap in if you can do, if you didn't get great sleep the night before, but try not to get yourself kind of too overwhelmed, because then you also get distracted by different things, distracted by what other people are doing and things like that. And you really just want to keep your stress low, being as chilled as you possibly can do, and get yourself mentally and physically in the best point for when you have to go on stage, so that you're ready, and you're like good to get going and enjoying it. On that note of maybe potentially being a bit busier on the day itself, you might end up in a situation where you can't eat your meals exactly at the times that you and your coach might have planned out. You might have exact timings kind of laid out for the day based on when you're going on stage, when you're predicted to go on stage. And if those times do end up getting shifted slightly, if registration runs over, or if your tan runs over, it's a different time, whatever it is, don't worry. Do not stress. Always have your meals with you in case anything changes. But definitely don't overly worry about it. A slight shift in your meal timings for like 10, 15 minutes, half an hour, it really, really won't make that much of a difference. Text your coach if you're worried about it, and I'm sure they'll put your mind at ease and give you the plan to roll with. But it definitely will not make any noticeable difference on your physique whatsoever. The only thing that will make a noticeable difference on your physique is if you allow it to cause you any stress, or then you rush to eat a meal, and then you probably end up with a difficult time with your digestion, you end up with distension. That's not what you want. So as long as you get that meal in, you get it in a calm environment, that really is the thing that matters most. And most shows run over anyway. So if you're a little bit late on a meal, I can guarantee it probably won't won't play a significant role at all. And then, kind of as I've already alluded to, when you are eating meals or when you are backstage, don't get distracted by what other people are doing, because a lot of people will be running very, very different protocols on show day. And you'll see people eating different foods, drinking, not drinking, maybe doing different pump up routines or whatever it may be. Just focus on what you have got to do for yourself and the plan that you've got for your coach. Your coach will have rationalized everything that you're doing for a reason anyway. But it can be easy to get distracted by what others are doing and think, oh, maybe I should do that, try this. Just focus on your plan. I promise you it will play out for you to look the best that you can possibly look on stage, because you definitely don't want that to kind of take away from you. And the distractions also can come via social media as well. You could be sat on your phone all day and see, oh, somebody's here or somebody's doing that, or she looks like this, I've just seen her suit and she looks amazing. Like, that's not going to help you on the show day in any way whatsoever. You want to be really present in that moment. Like, this is such an important moment that you've worked so hard for. So make sure that you can keep yourself as present as possible. Remove those distractions, focus on the things that you need to do. I often think that, like, listening to some music or like sitting with a friend in the crowd or having a friend with you backstage and just doing whatever allows you to chill out is definitely important. But when it comes down to it, make sure that you are backstage in a good time. Like I said, you might actually want to sit in the crowd and watch the show. Like, do that if you want to, but just make sure that you're backstage in a good time. You're not rushing to go anywhere, and make sure you give yourself enough time to pump up as well. That's a really, really big one. Your pump up will probably take you like 15 to 25 minutes because you want to do it gradually. You don't want to be rushing and suddenly trying to get like a mad pump on, like pushing yourself like crazily for like 5 minutes before you go on stage. If you think about how you get a pump in the gym, it's like gradually over time, like doing sets and resting over like probably a little bit longer, as opposed to just massively fatiguing yourself before you go on stage. That's actually not the goal. So make sure you give yourself plenty of time. Make sure you're present in the moment. And, when you get to that moment where you do go on stage, just take a deep breath, remind yourself of everything that you've done and everything that you've worked for, and just be so, so proud of getting to that moment, because as a first-time competitor as well, that is something to be immensely proud of. And you can just go on and you can just be confident in yourself, because that confidence does go extremely far on a competitive bodybuilding stage. So those are really like my main sort of just tips and guidance. I know it's been a bit of a higgledy-piggledy one, but I wanted to mainly just kind of go through some general things that I think I wish I definitely would have known, and that can be really helpful just to give you a little bit of preparation to kind of know what to expect and to know what to be aware of in advance, especially as a lot of people in prep now competing for kind of the earlier ends of the year. So yeah, hopefully this was a helpful one, guys. And if anyone's got any questions or any other things that you want me to go through on these, always just let me know. But aside from that, thank you so much for watching, for listening, and I'll be back with another episode next week.